Keir Starmer, in an act of breathtaking stupidity, made it one of the first things he did was scrapping that law. So that removes a deterrent, along with removing Rwanda as a deterrent.
This is an humiliating failure for him, then there's something wrong with...
Starmer constantly makes very stupid and strange decisions. Today we will discuss with you his latest statements, which really call into question his intelligence and adequacy. Of course, we are talking about migration policy. I actually have some good news, because what he said further increased his chance of resignation.
That's what the story is with this Labour government. Everything they seem to do is infuriating, and this one has really got my goat, as they say. As I said before the break, Isabel, 62,801 migrants who would have been permanently barred from settling in Britain will now be allowed to stay as a result of changes to the asylum system introduced by Keir Starmer. This has been revealed in a report by the Refugee Council, which reveals that tens of thousands of small boat channel crossers who arrived in Britain illegally will be granted asylum because Starmer scrapped the Rwanda scheme on day one of his administration.
The Labour government stopped deportations to Rwanda from the first day of government. Starmer abandoned the scheme completely, including flights and everything else. It was stupid of the Labour Party to abandon this scheme when it was obviously working. To take this off the agenda, just at the moment when we are starting to see a positive effect, is a ridiculous idea of the Labour Party. Starmer also promised to restore the broken asylum system, but he absolutely fails to do so.
This is resulting in, do you remember Labour's pledge? We're going to stop using hotels, far more hotels. This has resulted in them having to rush out to find thousands of extra hotel beds for migrants. They're having to be laid on amid an ongoing surge of unlawful arrivals. This is just one massive, great humiliation for Starmer, two-tier Keir and his
They also promised to stop using hotels for asylum seekers and reduce the number of asylum applications. Asylum seekers were accommodated in hotels, which cost about £6 million per day, while the total cost of accommodation amounted to £2.28 billion. Illegal migrants seem to be completely indifferent to the fact that the government has changed in Britain. In just one day, 419 people sailed without tickets and visas. They obviously don't know that Starmer promised to take care of them. Nigel Farage himself went by boat to patrol the coast of England. He said he saw a small boat with 45 people on it, and the escort vessel was coming from behind. It was the French, and that's what they're doing, despite the £500 million we gave them. On the part of Britain, attempts were made to leave refugees in France for money. Sunak announced an increase in funding for Coast Guard services, but the only thing that really stopped people from making a dangerous journey was the weather. Overloaded boats were blown away and overturned many times. People died.
Keir Starmer, in an act of breathtaking stupidity, made it one of the first things he did was scrapping that law. So that removes a deterrent, along with removing Rwanda as a deterrent. That means there is no deterrent. And now, instead of thinking about how he's going to actually send all these people home, kick them out, deport them, whatever language you want to use. As you say, he's going round asking the Home Office to put out the SOS to their hotel scoper-outers to find more accommodation. And here's the absolutely ridiculous thing. There are now hotels that were used under the last government for migrants, that the last government said, actually, we don't want to use hotels anymore because voters are getting really hacked off with this. So we're gonna actually get rid of the migrants. We're ending your contract with the hotel.
Starmer made a deal to deport migrants from the Chagos Islands to St. Helena. The government of St. Helena will allocate £6.65 million to receive migrants who travel by small boats. The island will accept migrants under the agreement for about 18 months until the agreement is fully implemented. So whether migrants can cause a culture shock, it is a very small island with fewer than 4,500 people living there. So any influx of population to the island will have an impact. It's a place where you know almost everyone you meet on the street by name. The move also drew criticism from the indigenous people of the Chagos Islands. The expulsion of the Chagossians is considered one of the most shameful episodes of modern British colonial history, and the Chagossians have been fighting for decades to return to the islands.
They then spent thousands of pounds putting the hotel back together to be a hotel, because generally these migrants cause quite a lot of damage. And now the hotels are being reconverted to have migrants again. I mean, this is complete and utter insanity.
Well, if Starmer can't spot that this is an humiliating failure for him, then there's something wrong with him upstairs.
Oh, he can't spot it.
I think that, well,
Doesn't get it.
This is terrifying then. In the past 2 weeks, by the way, 2,265 more migrants have sailed from...
The absolute record of daily border crossings in 2024 was recorded on the 18th of June, when the Conservative Party was still in power. At that time, about 900 illegal immigrants arrived in Britain. A total of 18,342 migrants have arrived in the UK since the beginning of the year. This is 13% more than in the same period last year. Illegal migrants often look for any opportunity to end up in the UK and obtain refugee status. The country's authorities spend several £million a day to accommodate refugees in hotels.
Yeah, and do you know the last time a government minister had to resign over immigration? It was actually in 2004 when a Labour minister called Beverly Hughes had to resign over an immigration scandal.
Used to be the press officer at one point, didn't she?
I looked back at this immigration scandal. It was so tame. You know, this was a kind of everyday occurrence now. It was a minor thing about a few Eastern Europeans who were fiddling their paperwork to get work visas here. A handful of people. This is now happening on an industrial scale up and down this country.
Beverly Hughes resigned after the Home Secretary warned her about visa fraud allowing people from Romania and Bulgaria to enter the UK. She denied knowing about the fraud. Her resignation did not help smooth the situation, as the Conservatives increased pressure on Blunkett and demanded an independent investigation into the Immigration Service. She was fired due to the intervention of Bob Ainsworth, the Deputy Chief Party Organiser of the government. After visiting Romania and Bulgaria when he was Home Secretary, he was concerned that the UK immigration services were churning out fake visa applications. This is an excerpt from Beverly Hughes' resignation letter. I have always said that nothing in my political and personal life is more important than my honesty, and although I did not intentionally mislead anyone, I decided that I could not in good conscience continue to serve as the immigration minister.
Of this, is there any suggestion that any minister will resign? No, because 62,801 is now just a rounding error in this gigantic catastrophe that we're facing.
Yeah, and as we discussed last night, Keir Starmer, you're probably not watching, but if any of your cronies or acolytes are watching, or even if you're watching, this, unless you do something about it, will lose you the next election. 100%. Why you Westminster lot can't get it through your thick heads that people in this country care about this. They want this solved. And you shrugging your shoulders in your elite North London houses saying, well, it doesn't really affect us and, you know, there are more important issues. For millions of people in this country, there aren't any more important issues. It is the most important issue. And if you don't get to grips with it, you're going to pay the price.
The migration crisis can have terrible consequences for the very statehood of the country. The reason for this was a violent crime in Southport. He was called a migrant or a radical Muslim on the internet, which later turned out to be untrue. He was born in Cardiff in 2006 to a family of Rwandan migrants. However, the pogroms and riots could no longer be stopped. Such consequences could have been prevented and avoided, but why didn't this happen? Firstly, the lack of a clear reaction of the official authorities to the crime and misinformation. Together, this led to weeks of pogroms and clashes between radical groups of citizens and police and migrant groups across the UK. As a result, dozens of people were injured across the country, including police officers, and hundreds of people were detained. Secondly, there has been a long overdue protest in British society, both against migration itself and against government policies, without creating real conditions for the socialisation of immigrants, which eventually became the main slogans of the protesters. This outrage and disappointment in society have been accumulating over the past years, but the authorities, as usual, did not care. The migration sector has been plagued by corruption for a long time, which allows many immigrants from other countries to settle in Britain with family members, not only on a study visa, but also on various social work programs. And the lack of normal conditions for the socialization of immigrants leads, among others, to radicalization in their environment. Thirdly, in conditions when it is necessary to objectively understand the tragic situation and promptly restore law and order, the government is creating a permanent army that acts in the interests of protecting Muslim communities from attacks. Will such a decision make it possible to stop protests, pogroms, and mutual violence? Definitely not. Against the background of a constant shortage of personnel in the police, changes in migration policy, the crime rate in the UK has doubled since 2010. Organised ethnic gangs operate in a number of small settlements, for example, from Pakistan or Afghanistan. What do you think about it? Share your opinion in the comments. See you.